Hi everybody, Sophia here from the Prenatal Snug, and today I'm joined by Carol from the Highlands Maternity Voice Partnership. So Carol, welcome, and I'm so excited to see that you've recently launched this Maternity Voices Partnership locally. Tell us a little bit about it and all about the launch. It's exciting.
Yes, it's really exciting. And like everything else, we were put on hold a bit with the COVID pandemic. So we've been working away in the background for 18 months or more to get this launched. So it's really exciting that it's now happened. So a Maternity Voices partnership is where a group of NHS professionals, midwives and other people involved in maternity care meet up with a group of ordinary people from the community who are interested in maternity care, and they work together to try to help to improve maternity care and make sure that women's voices are being heard. Not only women, their partners and families as well, are being heard by the people who are designing and planning the services for the future. So it's really exciting.
And it's such an important thing for women to be able to do. I mean, more and more these days, I'm seeing a lot of kind of birth activism around where you have a right to a positive birth, to a better birth. And it's true. And ultimately, of course, it's what everybody hopes a woman will experience at that time in her life. So what kind of things are women coming back to you with? What kind of information can they volunteer to you?
Well, sometimes it's small things that make a difference. And some women have mentioned things like they didn't realise that when their midwife was on holiday that she wouldn't be answering her usual mobile number. And although it's on there, it's usually on the maternity notes and the information women get who you should call when your midwife's on holiday. It's just worth flagging that up. And a few women have already mentioned that. So that's something that we can give a bit more publicity to. And once the midwives are aware of it, we can make sure people know about it. So that's quite an important thing, but it's quite easy to do something about it. So sometimes the small things are really important to hear about. We've also heard from people who've got longer stories and more serious issues to talk about, which will take longer to address, but they are, of course, important too.
And something as small as knowing the right phone number, it might seem like a tiny little blip on the horizon, but if you're heavily pregnant or you have some kind of, something happening that you're concerned about and you want to be able to reach somebody, just having to go back and look at paperwork is enough to get you in that kind of panic mode, where it's just knowing, oh, this is exactly what I need to do. So yes, even something as small as that can be something that's really, really important. Now, I mentioned to you before that I've just moved back up from England in the last year, and several of the women I worked with locally down there had quite difficult, challenging births. It wasn't always made easier by the staff that they were involved with. And for them, being able to go and speak to their local Maternity Voices partnership really made a huge difference. It gave them closure to some degree. It also meant that, yes, they could address some issues with the midwife or with the hospital involved, but they also then had a softer way to be able to feel like they were really making a difference, and they weren't speaking to a partnership that was defensive about what had happened before. So in that sense, what's the kind of the feeling, if you like, that people will receive when they get in touch with yourselves?
Well, we're here and we're listening, and the feedback is collected by a group of local women, and then we summarise that feedback, or we pick out the important points, and that is fed back to the committee where it's discussed, and then we think about what a way forward should be. We can't really go into really deeply into individual cases. If it's something that really requires making an individual complaint or an investigation, then you should first of all really contact your midwife. But we can direct people to support and help in order to do that if they need to. But I think often women want anonymous feedback. And that's fine. You can do that through us. You can just contact us and let us know what your feedback is or what your thoughts are. Sometimes people just want to make suggestions. That's really good too.
And I guess, like anything, you can have the kind of the challenging feedback to hear, or the more negative feedback, but then there's also the opportunity for this really worked, and be able to recognize what was also really good practice for that particular hospital, for those consultants, or for those midwives. I've got some positive feedback that I'll share with you in a minute, but what was some of the positive feedback that you might expect to hear?
Well, we've already had some positive feedback to say that having local scanning facilities has made a huge difference to women, to make it easier to get to appointments. Excuse me. So that's really important. We need to know what's good so that we can protect it and make sure it continues in the future.
And two of my local mums have given birth at Rigmore Hospital in the last month, really. And both of them came out and said that the midwives were just amazing. They were so lovely. And I need to apologise to one of them, because I'm sure that she's got nail marks in her wrist where she was holding on to at one point. And particularly, you know, at the moments when there's been all these restrictions in place with COVID, then having masks and things on, that can add another layer of kind of that feeling of separation between the midwives and the people that they're looking after. But of course, midwife is all about being with mother, with women, with, you know, with that throughout the whole experience. And so it's lovely when you hear that positive feedback, and it's equally good when you've got a partnership such as yours. It's not looking to say, we don't want to hear that it's X, Y, or Z, because that's negative. It's really being open enough to say, come and tell us everything that's going on, because the women who have given birth, maybe not even right now, but further back, they've still got a voice to be able to make a really big difference for the future, haven't they?
Yes, they have. And at the moment, you can't post on our Facebook page publicly. You can send us a private message and you will always get a reply. You know, you usually get quite a short reply first, and then when we've had time to think about it, you'll get a longer, more detailed reply, and you will get to hear what's happened as a result of the feedback you've given. We don't have public posting on the page at the moment because we haven't got enough volunteers yet to moderate the page and have somebody available all the time. And I would definitely not want anyone to post on the page and have a negative comment from anybody. Yeah. So, you know, that won't happen. It's a really safe space at the moment. You know, and your feedback will be anonymous unless you say, actually, I want people to know it was me. We will always check that first.
And in that way, the Facebook page is there as a convenience for people. It's not there as the platform for people to want to share publicly or to start discussing with other people. They're looking for that feedback to come through you, and then in time back into the NHS, so that is the kind of route for change, as opposed to, I think this, but Mary next door says no. So yeah, we're not looking for that kind of chatty chat with everybody at the moment. It's let's collate that information and then do what we need to do with it going forward.
Yes, that's right. It is a proper partnership. So it's important as well for the midwifery staff that they feel safe to hear that feedback, and they know that their names are not going to be put on a Facebook page either. So that's where the partnership is. It's supposed to be that we're working together with the staff in a safe way for everybody.
Yeah, absolutely. And no, I think that's really important, and particularly in a place such as the Highlands, you know, where people are quite easily identifiable. For some people, they might have been the only person giving birth on that particular weekend, or there might only be one midwife with that name. And so it's creating that buffer and that kind of the comfort that what you say here comes in. It's confidential. It can be anonymous if you want it to be. But rest assured that feedback will be put forward as something that can help to promote change. Maybe not even just in the hospital or the particular area that person experienced it in, but also throughout the other hospitals within NHS Highland.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Really. And it's really important that people share the information that the page is there. Let all your friends, everyone you know who's having a baby, know that we're there. Everybody who's even thinking about having a baby, let them know that the page is there for them to use. And if you know of anyone who's not connected to Facebook, or they haven't got access to the internet, then you can send a message on their behalf, or you can let us know and we'll give them a ring on the telephone call, or find a way where we can get in touch with them, because we want to hear from women who are not usually giving their feedback, people who are perhaps less confident usually to do that, or people who haven't got easy access to the usual channels. We want to hear from those people, and we want to hear from their partners too. That's a thing, because when partners are there with the woman having a baby, it's a really important experience in their life as well, and we want to find ways to improve things for partners. We have had some comments from women who've said they're a bit concerned about their partners and the care that they need during that experience. And some women who've had a difficult experience have said it was difficult for their partner too. And we'd love to hear from those people. We'd love to hear from those partners, from men who've been at a birth. What would help to make the experience better for partners, you know?
And that's a really interesting point. One of my local ladies commented that there was also a student midwife in the room when she was giving birth. And her phrase was that the student midwife was fantastic and she was really there more for emotional support. Now, I'm guessing in many ways that happened because she maybe didn't have such a defined role or as much responsibility as the senior midwives at the time. But just for her, she recognised that having somebody there for that extra emotional support made the world of difference, particularly if her husband wasn't able to be with her for the whole of that time. And I think what you said there, Carol, around perhaps women who are less vocal, who are less confident in coming forward with their ideas, that's a really, really important part. It's also something that we talk a lot about with women who are preparing to give birth, is finding their voice and recognising that at the end of the day, they can have all the medical advice coming forward, but it is their birth, their body. It can be as much their way as long as they're making a kind of educated decision based on the information that's presented to them, so that they really understand what the risks are, what the benefits are of doing one particular thing. And I'm sure it's changing, and it's kind of a work in progress as we get much more politically correct throughout the UK and throughout the world, but also recognising that women don't need to be told you're not allowed to do this, or this is how we do it here, or we're going to keep you in because you need to be induced. It's really opening up women's confidence and understanding that it's not even about challenging those, it's about having a conversation so that they understand, and then that they feel that they're not having something done to them, but they're being more involved in it. So something as simple as knowing they've got this partnership to be able to come and talk to, maybe even in advance if they're apprehensive about something. Is it possible to speak to you in advance of having that, that birth experience, rather than just feedback afterwards? Is there a kind of buffer there for that too?
Women are certainly welcome to get in touch and, let us know how that birth planning process is going. We need feedback on that as well. And actually, a lot of people don't realise maternity services covers everything from pre-conceptual care right through to neonatal care, the first few weeks of a new baby's life, and that includes your experience on the neonatal unit if your baby needs extra care and goes to the neonatal unit. So we're also interested in women's experiences of prenatal care, starting with preconceptual care. Did you get any preconceptual care? Would you have liked preconceptual care? Let us know. That's all part of maternity services. It covers that whole journey. And yes, get in touch with us if you're not sure whether we want to hear from you. Just get in touch. It's better to do that than to sit at home and wonder, should I, shouldn't I? If you're wondering, then yes, get in touch with us. And the Scottish Government did a review of maternity services a couple of years ago now, and then they put together some recommendations, and there were over 70 recommendations that came through that maternity services in Scotland are working towards. But one of the things they said was that each woman should ideally have an individual plan of care.
Mm.
You know, that's what you were just saying, Sophia.
Yeah.
So the government is on our side as well. One of the other things the Scottish government is looking at the moment is mental health. That's been a huge issue with COVID, but it's also was a huge issue before that, and it's something that is becoming more talked about with maternity care. Organisations like the National Childbirth Trust have a big campaign on what they call the hidden half. You know, half of all women with concerns about postnatal mood, depression, whatever you want to call it, don't say anything, don't seek any help. That's the hidden half, and so this issue is really really important. And we've already had some feedback from women about mental health, and we want to hear more about that. And there are some sources of funding, and there are some projects going on that the Scottish government is setting up, and also some things going on locally. So that's a really important issue nationally and locally at the moment, and we want to hear more about it. It's a very personal, sometimes a very private issue, I understand that, but you know, it's important to let us know about those things as well. Mm-hmm.
And again, it's overcoming that fear of, should I go with this information or should I not? One of the ladies I worked with earlier at the start of the year, she suffered from really quite extreme anxiety. She's not within the Highlands, she's out with the area, but she was suffered from really extreme anxiety. And she said, you know, just 2 weeks before her estimated due date, she phoned up the midwifery ward just to say, you know, how many fire escapes do you have? And that was really important to her. She just woke up in the middle of the night and she thought, I need to know where the fire escapes are. I need to know that there's enough. And it was such a burning thing for her that she said that she just knew that she wasn't going to settle until she phoned to ask, how many fire doors are there? You know, what's the procedure to make sure it was there? And touch wood, everything was absolutely fine for her. You know, a very rare occurrence that she would need to have that information. But for her, that was really important. And it was being made to feel when she made that call that it was received with a caring response and not a kind of, oh, don't be so stupid, you know, just dismiss it. Because let's face it, there's hormones getting up to all sorts of stuff. There's definite thinking, and then to some extent for some people overthinking, because they want to make sure that everything for them and for their baby and for their future family is as safe and comfortable and welcoming as possible. And I think what you said there as well is really important, is involving dads or partners, same-sex relationships, whoever there is that's involved in that birth, really making sure that they are able to come forward and have their input, have their say. Because at the end of the day, we are, it might sound like a cliche, but we are creating the future society, the future world. And so the more that people put that input in there, then the better it can be. And how does that information then start to create any change, Carol? What's the longer term view for it? How do we know that this is not just going to be like a kind of talking shop? I know it's not, but how do we share with people what the process is then?
Well, we have obviously members of the NHS staff are actually sitting on the partnership. They come to the meetings and they will be discussing the feedback with us. But we also have some representation on some of the NHS committees and meetings in the NHS Highland, and we will be producing a report and we will make a plan of our work. What we're hoping to do when we've gathered a lot of feedback together over the next few weeks is to make a plan of what are the key issues that we really need to work on over the next year.
Yeah.
So our aim then will be to prioritise those issues so we can take them forward. You know, if you try to tackle everything at once, you can spread yourself too thinly. So we will work out what the key issues are that are going to make the most difference to the most women, or the most important issues, which is not always the same thing. Once we've decided that, we will take them forward to the NHS board, and we'll follow up on that. We won't just put the feedback forward and then leave it. You know, we'll be asking them what's happening about it and trying to follow it through to some conclusion, and then we'll share that information with the public through our page. We'll let them know what's happened to that feedback on that journey. So after every meeting that we have every month, I'm intending to post something on our Facebook page that lets you know what issues have we been talking about, what are we going to do about them, and what's happening. So keep coming back to the page, that's the message, and have a look and see. Some women will get individual feedback if they've raised a very pertinent, particular, issue. But there will be lots of general feedback for everyone to see on the page so that you'll know what's happening and what changes are coming up. And we'll also be putting some news on there as well, because it's important that the page stays active and interesting. And so if you've got suggestions, what topics would you like to see on the page? Let us know. We really want to hear from people.
And I think something that you said in there that really struck home for me in that moment is that this partnership is only as powerful as the input that women are prepared to give, or that partners are prepared to give, that husbands, whoever, is prepared to put in. Because if you're not getting the feedback to drive forward, it just becomes the people on the committee, oh, we think this. And so it's absolutely, you need that power, you need that input, whether it's good or bad, whether they think it's not a big deal. It might be something that they think isn't a big deal, but if another 2,000 people have already thinking it but not saying it, it can make a really huge difference, can't it? Enough people with sharing their views can really help to create that change and that momentum.
Yes, and sharing people's experience. This is what we call lived experience. Lived experience is very, very powerful feedback. It's someone's experience. And I think it's important to say that no one is going to make any judgment about anybody here. A woman or her partner's lived experience is her experience, and no one is going to make any judgment about whether she was underreacting, overreacting, being silly, or that is not what it's about. A woman's lived experience, her partner's lived experience, is really important. It's their experience. We respect that, and we're very grateful when people share those stories. And often, as you say, one woman who's brave enough to speak up is actually speaking up for lots of other people who've maybe thought the same thing. Quite a lot of the feedback we've had already is from women who've said, this happened to me, and actually I don't want that to happen to anybody else. They didn't make a complaint at the time. They could see why the situation had happened, and maybe they could understand why, because maybe it was because of COVID. We've had a lot of people who've said difficult things happened because we were in the middle of the pandemic, and they can understand why the staff had to do things the way they did, and they didn't want to make a complaint. But actually thinking about it afterwards and reflecting on it, actually it wasn't great, and they just don't want that to happen to anybody else if it's possible to make it better. So that's a good reason for getting in touch with us, if you want to make things better for other people in the future.
And it might sound dramatic, but they might be making a situation massively improved for the baby they've just given birth to in another 20, 25 years. Do they want to hear the same story or the same negative experience come back from their child, when just speaking up at that point could have made the big difference? Or also in another 25 years to say, oh, amazing, they're still doing that thing that is just so good. Then again, it's the good practice as well as the things of show us the areas of improvement, show us the areas that you're just finding unacceptable, and then show us the things that we can really make a big difference to create the best possible environment for those babies and for those women, and as much as possible for the dads or the birthing partners at that time. All amazing. So just to be clear, when people give their feedback to you. It can be anonymous. It will be put forward anonymously and made more generic if it's too specific. It will always be held confidentially. It's not just going to be chatted about with other random people. It will be fed back through the appropriate channels. And if somebody has an experience that is really in need of a reflection session with a midwife or a complaint for any reason, then that should first of all go through the hospital and through those appropriate channels. And then at some point, that information could come back to you.
Yes, it should do. And if a woman contacts us and it seems that that's the case, you know, we might encourage her and find some support for her to do that.
And so you touched very briefly. You touched briefly at the beginning, Carol, on the types of people that will be in this partnership. So when a woman or a man types in and sends their information through, it might be met by some members of the general public who are either new parents themselves or who have just volunteered to be part of this partnership and to access that information. So they don't need to be trying to dress up their language or communicate in medical terms. It can just be, I gave birth on Saturday and this happened and I didn't like it, or I gave birth on Saturday and this was amazing. I want to say thank you so much to X, Y, and Z. You know, it can be as generic and as chatty as that. And I think, again, when we've got access to email and access to Facebook, as you mentioned earlier, that if people are not digitally connected and they want to be able to have that feedback, then you're happy to take phone calls as well, or to have somebody call back so that information can come through. So in terms of your volunteers, you're still in need of a kind of groundswell of volunteers within the partnership as well, aren't you? What kind of skills might you be looking for if women want to get involved, or men want to get involved and take this feedback?
Well, we're looking for people who have IT skills or publicity skills, people to help us with the Facebook page and advertising our presence, that kind of social media kind of role. So if social media and advertising is your bag, then get in touch. We also need people in their local communities just to spread the word. We could ideally do with people involved with the partnership in all parts of the Highlands. So if there is a woman who, you know, doesn't have access to the internet or wants to speak to somebody face to face, socially distanced, that there might be someone in her area that she can talk to. In the future, it'd be nice to have people in local areas who could go along to mums groups, parent groups, the dads meet up things. I know there was a group in Inverness that was meeting up on a Saturday morning, a group for dads. So, you know, can go along to those kind of groups and gather feedback, just talk about what we do and who we are. So we need people who can do that. We have a monthly meeting once a month. Our meeting is on a Friday at 1:00, the first Friday in the month. And we meet virtually on Teams. So if someone wants to get fully involved, then they can, and you know, it can come along to those meetings and help us with the real meat of the work, planning our work programme and taking things forward to the NHS. So there's lots of different roles that people can get involved with. I had a lovely phone call with a woman who wanted to give some feedback. She contacted the page and said, could someone perhaps give her a ring, because she wanted to chat in a bit more detail, and it was lovely to talk to her. And she was just a bit younger than perhaps majority of women when she had her first baby, and it was really great to hear from her. And she said it's really important that younger women give their feedback as well. So that was really positive. And so if you are part of a group, a Facebook group, or an actual group of people that meet up, we want to hear from you, and you can publicise what we're doing, let people know we're here. That's really helpful.
I think
if you're interested to know more about us, just post us a message, and I'll get in touch with you.
And I think what you said there is really important as well. It's proactively gathering that feedback and that input, because that's what really helps to shape a service. You know, we all know that old idea that you're only as good as your last customer, in this case, your last patient.
Yes.
And if somebody has a good meal, they might tell a couple of people. I don't mean NHS food, I mean in a restaurant. If somebody has a good meal, they might tell a couple of people. But if somebody has atrocious service and finds a spider, they'll tell 100 and they'll be straight onto Facebook. This was disgraceful. And so when we can gather that information a bit more proactively, then it's also going to give a more balanced view, because it's not only going to be the kind of negative, oh, this must be terrible because all of this is happening. It's also being able to get all of that good information through, and to really work out and shape what the best practice is. And I say often to the women and to the couples that I work with, is remembering that midwives and NHS staff and everybody that you come into contact with, they might have a uniform on, but they're people. They're people behind that. You know, they might have children, they might have babies, they might have partners, they've definitely got parents at some time along the way. So they're also just humans with their own kind of lived experience. And so finding a way as much as possible to be able to relate and connect with them, and just sometimes it's almost stepping out of the patient authority dynamic, isn't it? And recognizing that you can talk on a more, well, how does that work? And I'm interested in this, and what's the benefit of this? And I think when people feel like they've got more of that voice in the first place, it can really help to shape the care overall. And for now, having this partnership is an amazing way to be able to do that. If in hindsight, you maybe think, oh, I wish I'd asked for this, or I didn't like to bother the midwife and ask about this. And so if they've got that feedback, and it becomes more posters on the wall saying, ask us anything, you know, all these things make a really big difference, not just to you, but to everybody that follows you. And as we said, maybe even to your own children in the future. So really, really important.
Every year, the NHS Highland sends out a questionnaire to all the women who've given birth over the last year, and it's quite detailed. It doesn't take too long to fill in, but there are a lot of questions in it. And I would encourage everyone who's had a baby in the last year to take part in that when it comes your way. You know, when you get sent a link to that, I think it's usually on what do you call it? Mine's gone blank now.
Dropbox or G Drive? SurveyMonkey, yeah.
So it's usually on SurveyMonkey, and it's really easy to fill in. And I would encourage everyone to fill it in if you get the chance. If you're sent that to your midwife because you've had a baby in the last year, then fill it in. But of course, it goes to the women. It doesn't go to their partners. There are some boxes on there to just add in any other comments that you'd like to make. So that's a place where you can add in those kind of comments. But often people think of their feedback when they start planning for their next baby, or when they're talking to a friend, you know, and she's just had a baby, and you start talking and you say, oh, actually, yeah, that happened to me as well. You know, so sometimes that questionnaire comes and goes, and then it's after that you think of something. So that's the time to let us know. And most of the maternity units in the UK do have a Maternity Voices partnership. In other parts of Scotland and in other parts of the UK as well. But we haven't had one in Highland for quite a few years. So we now do have this new one. And so it means you've now at last got access to something that people in other parts of the UK have had for quite a while. So that's a positive thing about it as well.
Absolutely. And one piece of feedback I get from every woman I've ever worked with who has given birth is that the tea and toast is the best thing in the world with proper salty butter. So whatever happens, we need to keep the tea and toast.
Right. I'll make a note of that from this morning.
Really important, and preferably some gluten-free options too.
Yes.
So I guess the $1 million question, Carol, is, what's the address for the Facebook page? How do people get in touch? What's the email address? How do they contact you or somebody that represents the partnership?
Well, the email address is highlandmaternityvoices@gmail.com. And that's all on the Facebook page. It's going to be on the maternity notes. That's going to be added onto maternity notes. So every woman who's having a baby should be able to find it on there. The Facebook page is really easy to find. If you just search for Highland Maternity Voices, it comes up straight away. And you'll see a lovely picture with our logo on, and pregnant woman with a lovely sunset behind her on the page, so it's quite easy to recognize. And I'm sure Sophia has got the links on her page from the launch, and we can put them on again. So it is easy to find us. And if you're not sure, ask your midwife, because the midwife should know about us. That would be a good quiz, wouldn't it? Ask the midwife if she knows about it. I know one of the midwives in Invergordon definitely knows about it, because she's very involved and has already suggested one of her women contacts us, and she's done so. But just check. I wonder if your midwife's heard about us yet. That would be interesting.
It's a test. Ask the midwife whenever you next see a midwife. Ask her, have you heard about the HMVP? And see what the feedback is in between.
So we're going to have some little flyers printed soon, some little A5 flyers as well. And unfortunately, people are not really sitting in their doctor's surgery waiting room at the moment, so it's no good putting them up on the board there. But midwives will soon have something like that, which they can hand out to people. But pieces of paper do have a habit of getting lost, so I think the best thing to do is just search Highlands Maternity Voices on Facebook, and you'll find us really easily.
Perfect. And as we said earlier on, the power from this partnership will come from people being willing to input, to give their feedback, whether it's goods, bads, a little bit indifference. All of that feedback is really important. And the Facebook page and its vitality is going to come from, again, their willingness to input and to be involved, because this is something that, it's not something for you to do on a rainy day. It's something to really help to make that change, and to encourage women and their partners or their husbands to come forward and speak up in whatever way, shape or form that is.
And don't be put off if English is not your first language either. I sadly don't speak anything other than English, but we certainly know people, or can find people who do. It would be brilliant if we could find some members of communities in the Highlands who use other languages who would help us. My hubby does speak a little bit of Polish, but not sufficient to conduct any kind of maternity work, I'm sure.
And that's a really good point. You don't have to be from the Highlands to have your say or to be involved as a volunteer. Really important.
Yes. So if there are, maybe there are some parents out there who could reach out to women in Polish community, other communities in the Highlands for whom English is not their first language, and help us with that. So that would be really great.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Carol, anything else that you would like to add today? Anything that needs to be said that we haven't touched on already?
Well, I'd just like to say thanks very much, Sophia, for inviting me to come on and talk about the partnership. We've had a really good launch. We've had some nice feedback, and we've had some more challenging feedback, which we will obviously be addressing. We've had a couple of volunteers, people who want to get involved and help us, and we need more. We just want to hear from you. So get into.
Absolutely. It's good to connect, and over the last year and everything else that's happened, it's definitely good to talk.
Yes.
All good. Carol, thank you so much. And for everybody else, I'll post the links down below for the group here. So do make sure that you go and check out the page. You have your say. You remember that page is there, even if you're just thinking about your family at the moment, or if you're already pregnant, even if you had your baby a few years ago. If there's something in your mind that you think, oh, I wish I'd said, I can't remember the name of the midwife, how do I feed that back now? All the kind of chitter chatter that happens in your mind, then this is a forum where you can come in and have your say and really make that point. Yes. So thank you so much. I will just hit end on this for now. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.